Yeah, thank you, Vijay, for this very sharp focus, precise presentation, very informative. Uh, there was a question that Gaurav Shamali had asked while you were speaking.
Yeah.
He wanted to know, he wanted to speak a little bit more about what you meant by spiritual stress.
Ah, okay. Very good question. Thank you for that. See, most people believe correctly that spiritual practice should help you at the time of stress, and it does. So, when we talk about spiritual stress, we are not talking about that part of it. Let me explain what it is that I'm talking about when I say spiritual stress. See, the first thing that happens with many of us is that because of, for whatever reason, whether it is because of our education or because our social expectations and social norms are such, what tends to happen to us is that we start leading a life that is not authentic to us. That means if my personality is of a certain kind, my values are of a certain kind, my priorities are of a certain kind, but I'm not living by that. I'm living by something else. I'm living by some other set of values. I'm living by some other set of expectations. Then I'm not being authentic to myself. I'm leading a fake life. I'm leading an inauthentic life. And an inauthentic life creates a great deal of stress upon us. So, one aspect of what we call spiritual stress is this tendency of many people to lead an inauthentic life to the extent that their life loses meaning. And they say, what is the point? What am I living for? What is the meaning of this life? Right? I'm not feeling very happy. I'm feeling empty inside. I'm not feeling fulfilled. I'm not feeling satisfied. And so this leading an inauthentic life can create a great deal of stress because you now start asking the big questions to which you don't have any answers. Questions like, who am I? What is the meaning of my life? What is the legacy I'm going to leave behind that will help other people? And if I don't have an answer to that, my life becomes meaningless, and this creates a certain amount of spiritual stress. So, this is one cause of spiritual stress. The second cause of spiritual stress is when my values, what I believe in, mere usul, if you like, I'm in an environment where my values don't matter, where I'm being pushed into a direction that I'm not comfortable with. For example, if I'm an honest person in a corrupt organization and I'm being asked to do unethical things which I don't feel good about, then obviously my values are compromised. Or, for example, if I'm, let's say, if I'm having to do things that I don't believe in, then again, it leads to a point where I start feeling very uncomfortable inside, and it creates a whole level of spiritual stress. And so we then have to figure out at the level of values, what is the right thing for this person? What is it that they need to be doing? Should they be looking for another role? Should they be looking for another job? Should they be looking for a transfer within the same organization? Things like that. That's the second part. The third part of spiritual stress is that now this has got to do with spirit itself. I don't know what to call it. You can call it God, you can call it the universe, nature, life, anything that you want to call it. But what happens with us in our day-to-day life is that we lose connection with that part of us, the spiritual part of us, the deeper self as we call it. And we become very mechanical, and we become very money oriented and materialistic. And I had become like that. I know that for a fact, that I come from a very orthodox and a very religious family. I had a very strong religious upbringing, but then I fell away from it. I in fact walked away from it, and I became disconnected from that source itself. And when that happened to me, there was an important part of me that was missing. And so I had to rediscover that. And I had to rediscover that in my own way. So I did not go back to religion or to Orthodox religion because I'm not a big believer in that. But I did go back to spirituality and spiritual practice. And today I feel that I'm far better connected with that deeper part of myself, the wiser part of myself, the more mature part of myself, which I was not doing before. So spiritual stress arises from these three sources. Number one, if you're not leading an authentic life. Number two, if you're not living in alignment with your values. And number three, if you have lost connection with your deeper self. And so in our work, we try to help people find that purpose and find that meaning again in their life. And we find that if they can find that meaning, sometimes for me, for example, now my purpose of life is to help other people with cancer. And having found that purpose, now I don't feel that sense of emptiness inside me at all. I feel very fulfilled every day when I get up because of the kind of work that I'm doing. I know that I'm living in alignment with my values. And I know that my own practice connects me back to my deeper self. So this in a nutshell is what spiritual stress actually means. I hope I've been able to explain it.
That was very graphic and deep. I would take advantage of the fact that since I'm George Abraham, I would ask you another question.
Yes.
This is regarding your colon cancer.
Yes.
Now, which stage of cancer was it when you were diagnosed? Number one. Number two, the assessment that most people who have cancer in India or in other countries like the US, at what stage do you reckon that chemotherapy might not be recommended? You said you were kind of told, you were given the choice.
Yes.
In countries like India and the US, you said the choice is not often given.
Yes.
Does it have to do with the gravity of the situation, or is it a kind of an informed approach that the Englishmen take?
Great question, George. So, see, my cancer, according to the doctors, had been in my body for somewhere between 2 to 3 years prior to the surgery. Okay. But fortunately, colon cancer is a very slow growing cancer. And therefore, it had not grown very rapidly. It had grown very slowly over those 3 years. And yet, I had two tumors simultaneously in two different parts of my colon. So that was a little bit serious. And so you asked the question about the stage. The stage that was told to me was that my cancer was called stage 2B, which means somewhere between stage 2 and stage 3. And what that meant is that the cancer was localized to the colon. It had not spread anywhere else. And none of the lymph nodes around that area were also infected in any way. So when they did the surgery, the doctors were quite confident that they had removed all the cancer from the body. But obviously just their confidence is not enough. So they ran quite a few tests. And when I went through my PET scans, etc., the PET scan was quite clear. So it did not show any cancer anywhere else in the body. So that was one piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence was that in the UK, they maintain statistics of different patients, different stages of cancer, different age groups, racial groups, etc. So when they looked at all that data, they said, look, if we see the trends and looking at all this data, somebody of your age, somebody with stage 2B cancer, successful removal of the tumor and the colon, clear PET scans, this is where you are in this slightly gray zone of whether we should mandate chemo or we should leave it to you. We won't say to you, you should not take it, but we will not say to you that you must take it because you're in that gray zone. And that gray zone came out of a lot of statistical analysis. It wasn't just a judgment call. So in a way, I was lucky, A, that my surgery was successful, but B, that the doctors gave me that choice. The truth is, if the doctors had not given me that choice, none of this journey may have happened. I would have simply gone and taken chemotherapy because the doctors told me karna hai, and perhaps none of this would have happened. So it's very interesting how this turning point took place in this very gray kind of a zone and then pushed me into this direction. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
So Shruti, any other questions that either you have or the audience has for me? I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, I have a couple of hands raised, but before I go to them, I'll ask you a question that struck me when you were talking. You were talking about, this whole thing about immunity, and now in the context of COVID. So, I mean, and you seem to have gone through it all so many years ago, and suddenly this new situation is created where people are actually talking about how to relook at life. People are changing things personally, professionally,
Yes.
absolutely changing gears in their life.
Yes.
So, how do you, as someone who's already been through that, look at today's situation?
I must be honest with you. I look at it with some amusement. I look at it with some amusement because this truth has existed forever. It is not that this truth is new. It is only that our realization is new. And our realization has now come about because as a planet, we feel the threat.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the threat was not directly affecting us. It was affecting somebody else. Right. Now, I want to give you a statistic which may surprise you. See, COVID has now been with us for about 8 months. Right?
Yeah.
In 8 months, the world has lost 8 lakh people to COVID. 8 lakh people have died. And the planet has come to a shutdown. Yes?
Yes.
With cancer, 8 lakh people die in 1 month around the world. That is how big cancer is. And nobody pays attention to that. So it's very interesting that, when COVID has struck everybody, and because there is no vaccine, we don't know what to do. There is so much uncertainty. We are so scared. We are now beginning to look at our immunity. We are now beginning to look at taking certain kinds of measures. We are now beginning to look at saying, why should we lead life like this? Why can't we lead a quieter life? Why can't we lead a life that is more environmentally conscious, etc., etc., etc.? Whereas anybody who has been through cancer or has been through a serious illness has already understood this or should have understood this, right? So the way I look at it is that obviously COVID is a terrible thing, and that, even one death is not worth it. Why 8 lakh deaths is a lot of people who have died. But if it really helps us to look at ourselves and look at the way we live and look at the future in a different way, then that may be the silver lining to this particular cloud.
Sure. Thanks. I'm going to go to the audience now. Madhu Singhal, you have a question. I've unmuted you, Madhu. Please ask your question. You'll need to unmute from your end.
Alt A.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask?
Please.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Bhat. It was a very wonderful session. And one question actually I wanted to ask, which George has already asked about your chemotherapy and all.
Yes.
But it was really a wonderful session. And I just would like to know, you have faced this difficulty from 2013 onward. 2000
onwards.
2001. So now almost 20 years over.
Yes.
So how did you face the community? Because people will give lot of advice, lot of things. And when there is a, allopathy, homeopathy or Chinese treatment, so many things are there. So how did you make yourself more impact, and you have decided whatever you want to do to take the decision? That was really very difficult for the people, because people will be, taking you here and there, everywhere. So that is what I just wanted to know. 20 years, how did you manage?
It's a very, very good question, Madhu. I was also, like everybody else, I was also running around from trying this, trying that, do this, do that, you know, ye khao, wo mat khao, ye piyo, wo mat piyo, aap har din aap Hanuman Chalisa karo, and somebody else, you know, all these things would be there. And I must say, I tried many of them, or all of them, in fact, okay, because I didn't know any better. And this is the beauty of it, that actually there is no simple, powerful, scientific framework which can help you decide this. That is what we have created. Our approach and our framework really offers people a simple way by which you can actually say, what should I be doing at the physical level? Here are my options. What should I be doing at the mental level? Here are my options. What should I be doing at the emotional level? Here are my options. And so on. So that it becomes possible for people to have a meaningful conversation. Otherwise, the conversations are driven by fear.
Yeah.
And because we are afraid and we don't know what to do, we try everything and then we try nothing. So you're absolutely right. The reason why we try to do the work we do today is because I don't want people to go through the same confusion that I went through. I want people to have a much simpler framework. I want them to be able to have far better conversations with their oncologist. I want them to have far better conversations with their families. I want them to have far better conversations with anybody in the community, so that we are better informed and we can take actions meaningfully. How did I do it? I did it the hard way, by trying everything and then arriving at this framework.
You know, there is another dimension to Madhu's question, which is that when anybody is kind of diagnosed with something like a cancer,
yes,
often the family and people around take control of your life.
yes,
And it's very difficult to break out of that control.
Yes.
So
yes.
How did you manage to do that?
Very good, great question. So first of all, let's be compassionate, because when you are diagnosed with cancer, you're in such a vulnerable and fragile state that actually you're in no position to look after yourself. You do need other people to look after you for some time. Okay. And so I would say that it's a good thing if you have people around you supporting you and helping you. However, if it continues for too long, then you become a victim. So the real question is, what is that appropriate time and when do you start to actually shift out of it? So let me tell you what happened in my case, which is very unusual. I don't know, George, if you're aware, but I'm an introvert. I'm not somebody who is a very public person, actually. But when my cancer was diagnosed in 2001, I did something very unusual for me. My cancer was diagnosed on the 11th of December. And on the 14th of December, I wrote an email to 500 of my friends, relatives, colleagues around the world, telling them I had cancer. Okay. And my family was horrified, as you can imagine. And many people I know were horrified. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Kyun sab kar rahe ho? Tumhara treatment hone do, etc., etc. But you know, I felt at that time that here I was living in London. We were far away from the people that we loved and cared about us. And I felt the need to reach out and ask for help. So I did. And it was amazing the kind of responses I got. People reached out with books and CDs and suggestions and saying that, look, you're not the first person. We are all helping you. We are all cheering you. And I got a tremendously positive response. And I can tell you that it helped my healing a lot. So actually today I advise people to say, don't hide your cancer, but take the advice with a pinch of salt. Okay, you need support, but you don't need to follow everything that you are told to follow. If you can find that right balance between the two, then actually I think you'll be in a good place. Shruti?
Yeah, I'll go to the next question. So there's a question in the chat. Sania says that how to overcome illness anxiety. Even if our reports are normal, we are constantly worried about a particular illness, even if we know that the reports are normal, you know.
Sanya, you're very right. It's just, human nature. I can tell you that 19 years later, even though my cancer is in remission, every time I go for a checkup, I have butterflies in my stomach. I'm also nervous. I'm also anxious. So it is natural. It is normal. Uh, yes, as time goes on, it gets easier. It gets better. But I would not be very harsh on yourself because it is natural to feel that anxiety. What do you have by way of managing that anxiety? That is what you need to look at. So if you're doing all the right things, if you're looking after yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, then the hope is that that anxiety will be a little bit less. I think the anxiety is greater when we are not doing enough for ourselves, when we are not caring enough for ourselves. So I guess my advice to you is do everything you can and leave the rest to whatever power is there.
Thank you. Hope that answers Sania's question. Um, Vijay, you're talking about anxiety. Often it helps, and it's happened with me personally. So this is a personal question again. Is that when you suffer from a gut health issue, often people say that your mind and your gut are very linked together.
Yes.
And if you have anxiety, it throws you off. If you go through stress or a difficult situation in life, it throws you off, and your gut health is impacted first. But and there'll be a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists and even your doctors and your spiritual trainers telling you, oh, learn to manage stress, etc. But I've often been frustrated at that advice, because I feel that if my gut health were to improve in the first place, I won't have that mental stress. The idea of falling sick again and again and again and not being able to eat well, or even after being so cautious, it happens. But I don't find an answer to that from any doctor or any trainer for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That, our mind, our body, our emotions are all connected. And in fact, our program and our approach that I described is based upon a science, and that science is called Psychoneuro Immunology.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So let me explain what that means. Psycho, mind, thought and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Neuro, our neurology,
Mm-hmm.
what transmits those thoughts and feelings through the entire body. And immunology means our immune system.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a science that clearly shows the relationship between our thoughts and feelings, our neurology, and our immunology.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the beauty is that this process works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people say that, look, you should be looking after yourself at all levels. So let's say there is a gut health problem, right? Now the gut health problem may have certain physical dimensions to it.
Yeah.
Which have to do with diet and rest and exercise and sleep and so on. Obviously, you have to do that.
Yeah.
But there may be other dimensions to that gut problem that are not only physical, right? For example, some people carry their negative emotions in their gut. Some people carry their negative emotions in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
Some people carry their negative emotions here. Some people carry their negative emotions in their back. So a trained practitioner will be able to help you or help anybody and say, look, what is the relationship between your emotions and that gut issue? Some people may be looking at it from the perspective of chakras,
Mm-hmm.
to say that, look, gut issue means third chakra. So what are you going to do with regard to your third chakra? So the beauty of this holistic system and this psychoneuroimmunology is that you can address the problem from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're interested in doing that, and if you're open-minded and curious about doing that, then you will be able to learn a lot about yourself in the process, and hopefully you will grow from that experience. So there is no easy answer to it, but I can tell you that there is good science behind it. And that science is called the science of Psychoneuro Immunology.
I'm definitely going to take it up offline with you.
Sure, sure. You're welcome.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll go to Jay Chandran, who has a question. Jay Chandran, if you can unmute from your end, please.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question is little crude. Sorry. What do you suggest? It is not better to go for chemotherapy. That is the thing you are suggesting, or
No,
what actually?
no. Thank you for asking that question. It's a very important question.
One more thing. Don't mute me. I have one more question also, please. Yeah, you go, sir, please.
Please go ahead and ask.
The second question is, what is the finding of your long journey, and what sort of if somebody what is the suggestion you are giving for the cancer patients, and what sort of help you are extending for the cancer patients? You are saying some driver course, something like that, right?
Yes, I'll explain both.
Because one of my dependent is also cancer, actually suffering from cancer.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me take the first question first. Right.
Please don't mute me till the answer is okay.
Yeah. So the first question first. I am not recommending to anybody that you should not take chemo. You must follow your doctor's advice. Okay. If your doctor thinks that chemo is required for you in your condition, your doctor knows best. You don't know best. I don't know best. Okay. So make absolutely no mistake. I'll repeat myself again that please follow your doctor's advice. Your doctor knows best. In my case, because of that funny situation that I was in, and because of the statistics that they noticed, they gave me the choice. I could have still chosen to take the chemotherapy. That was my choice, not to take the chemotherapy, right? But very few people are in that kind of a situation, and very few people will be given that choice. So please don't generalize what I did to anybody else. I think that would be very dangerous to do. Okay, so that is, I hope that lays the first question to rest. The second question that you asked is, what is our program? What is it that we really do? So Jayachandran, see, what happens is that most people who have a certain socio-economic level will generally get good medical treatment. Okay. I know that there are many people who are in the lower socio-economic levels who struggle to get medical treatment. But most people who are, let's say, on this call, who can speak English, and we are having this conversation, we will be able to get reasonably good medical treatment. The problem with cancer is that the suffering that you have from cancer is not just medical. It is emotional, it is psychological, it is mental, it affects the whole family, it is financial. And there is no one to help you think through and address all these questions. So I describe it as there is medical related suffering, and then there is non-medical or human suffering. So what we do is that we don't get into the medical space. We are not qualified to enter that medical space. The doctors know best. We respect the doctors, and we are happy to work with the doctors. But the doctors don't have the time, as you know. The doctors don't have the training, unfortunately. And therefore, the non-medical and the human side of it can get neglected for years and years and years. And also in our country, the psychology industry is also not very well developed. So people are left on their own to figure it out. And that is where, as Madhu said, a lot of confusion can come into the picture. So our work is we offer what we call a Thriver program, which is like a coaching or a counseling program that we do online, where we help people go from the beginning to the end. It's a process, like it's a protocol that we have created. Just like you have a medical protocol, this is a coaching protocol that we have created. And that protocol is delivered by trained people who I have trained in our framework. And all of those people have also been through cancer themselves. Okay, so I don't want anybody who is helping a cancer patient who doesn't know what the real issues are with cancer.
Okay.
So what we have done is we have identified a group of people, they have trained with me, and now they help other people who are going through cancer. But again, I want to clarify, we don't provide medical advice because we are not clinically trained to do so. We tell them about all these other dimensions. What can you do physically? What can you do mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually? How do you deal with that? What should be the new purpose of your life? What should be your holistic action plan to go forward so that you can really look after yourself? And so that they don't have to go through all this confusion that was spoken about earlier. Does that clarify?
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Jayachandran?
Okay, sir. Do you have any website or any other thing to contact you?
Yes, I'll put my website in the chat. You can go to it and you can contact us through that.
Could you please spell it out?
Yes, I'm putting it in the chat box.
Yeah, and we will share it with you, Jayachandran.
Okay, sir. Okay.
This is George Abraham. I will ensure that either Shruti or I would share that with you.
We'll send it to you on WhatsApp and email, whoever wants that. Yeah?
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you.
We'll go to the next question. Ankita, you have a question. I've unmuted you. Please unmute from your end.
Good afternoon, sir. It was a very inspiring session, and it is really applauding that how you came out of this. I have one very valid question. I would say, how does an attendant deal with the patient like with such a serious illness, especially the partner? And yeah, and do you suggest any course you have like that? Or I think because the partner is ultimately equally suffering.
Yes.
With the patient.
Yes.
So just light on this.
Yeah, thank you, Ankita. That's a great question. And you're absolutely right that cancer not only affects the individual who gets it, but cancer also affects the family. And obviously, cancer also affects the partner, who is usually the primary caregiver for the person, right? And so what happens to the primary caregiver is that without warning, suddenly one fine day, I like to joke and say, oh, you've been promoted to caregiver, right? And now you have to suddenly take on a whole set of responsibilities in addition to what you already have to do, right? Unfortunately, the ecosystem in our country to help and support caregivers is very poor. It does not really exist. And I'm not just talking about cancer, I'm talking about caregiving for many other conditions, chronic health conditions, like respiratory conditions or even age-related conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that. So I believe that actually there is a great need to create good programs for caregivers. We offer some programs for caregivers and we are designing a coaching program specifically for caregivers. But right now what we do is that when we are doing our cancer coaching, we invite the caregivers to be part of the process. So there are two benefits in that. The first benefit is that the caregiver understands what we are recommending to the patient, and therefore the caregiver can support the patient appropriately. The second is that the caregiver themselves also can benefit from the process. Now, some caregivers are very interested and they want to be part of it, but other caregivers are not that interested, to be honest with you, because they've got so many other things that they are busy with that they don't have the time for it. But I think you make a really good point. It is a big gap, and I wish that there would be more resources available for the caregivers as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I really hope that too.
Yes.
So Vijay, while the next person is getting ready, I'll just ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
In your experience, is cancer something, does lifestyle have anything to do with cancer, or it can come to anybody at any point of time?
Well, actually, lifestyle has a lot to do with cancer, George. The World Health Organization actually says that only 7% of cancer is genetic in its origin. 93% of cancer is related to lifestyle or environment conditions. So that is a pretty shocking statistic when you think about it, because when you read the newspaper reports, it almost feels as if everything to do with cancer is genetic. But actually it is not as genetic as we might think. A lot has to do with lifestyle. The only thing I would say is that we've also got to look at lifestyle in a broad, in a holistic way. We can't look at lifestyle only in a physical sense. And once we look at our lifestyle in a holistic way, as I said, physical, mental, emotional, relational, spiritual, then there is a lot that can affect, and there is also a lot that you can do. So in some places, cancer is in fact described as a lifestyle disease rather than a genetic disease or an infectious disease. So the answer to your question is yes, it has a lot to do with your lifestyle.
Okay, Chintan, Chintan, you have a question?
Yes. Good evening, Vijay ji. I have a question.
Yes.
That in this, through the whole process of non-medicalization of this thriving drive, how a visually impaired person can be a productive member by getting training or any sort of communication training, that he can be a productive member or a part of this thriving drive, so that he can protect himself as well as he can be helpful to others to protect their cancer in future.
Great question, Chintan. So as I said, we have the Thriver program, and the Thriver program is delivered by people who I call our Sherpa. Have you heard of the word Sherpa? Sherpas are people who...
Sherpas, they are from Nepal, I guess.
Mountain. Help the mountain.
Exactly. So our cancer coaches are called Sherpas. I call them Sherpas. Just like Sherpas, they are people who are familiar with the terrain. They know what to expect. They have been there themselves before. They are used to carrying the load and guiding other people. And most importantly, they are doing it with a attitude of service, because they're not interested in climbing the mountain themselves. They would rather that the other person climbs the mountain, right? So what you're asking is that, is it possible for a visually impaired person, if they want to associate with this cause, can they become a Sherpa and can they help other people? That's your question, I think.
Yes, exactly, sir. Exactly.
So to be honest, this is the first time somebody like you has asked this question. I have not given it much thought. I think in principle, it is certainly possible for somebody with a visual impairment to become a Sherpa. How that training would be imparted to somebody who's visually impaired, I don't know as yet. And maybe it is something that between George and I, we can start to think about and say, look, if there are people who are interested in something like this, could we make some kind of training, or could we make some of our modules at least available to them? I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a good one. It's an important one. I don't see a problem in principle, but I do think that we will have some implementation challenges that we may have to overcome. And I would look for guidance from people like George as to how one might be able to do it. George, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah.
George, your connection seems to be a little unstable. We are not able to hear you. I think he's gone off. He'll come back.
He's dropped off.
Yes.
But Chintan, we will hold that question, and thank you for raising it.
George, you need to unmute your audio.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Because I feel that there must be some area in which we can be a productive member of such drive and play a vital role in patients who can come out from cancer, and we can play a minor or major role in that happiness.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for considering us.
I was muted there. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. There are two, three things I wanted to quickly say. From what I understood from your definition of Sherpa was, your Sherpas are all cancer recovered people. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So, in the case of a visually impaired person,
Yes.
If he is a cancer recovered person, I think he would bring two dimensions to the campaign.
Yes.
One is his experience of recovering from cancer and what he will bring to the table.
Yes.
Secondly, his life experience and his lived experience as a visually impaired person and taking on life.
Yes.
So that would be probably a plus to the campaign.
Yes.
Having said this, another association that the visually impaired people have had with cancer, this movement started in Germany, but now it's come to India, where visually impaired women are being trained to actually, by touch, diagnose breast cancer at a very early stage.
Yes, I've heard about this.
Yeah, there is the National Association for the Blind in Delhi for the women, who have actually been trained to train visually impaired women to actually be able to work in clinics and hospitals to actually diagnose cancer at a very early, breast cancer at a very early stage. So that's another aspect. And I think you might want to explore and see whether the second dimension that a visually impaired person brings to the table can be a standalone use for your Thriver campaign. That's something which you might want to examine.
Okay, good point. George, we'll talk about this separately.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, there is, Alicia has asked a question saying that her family is not, there's a dear one who suffers from breast cancer, and her family is not economically well off, and they've exhausted most of their resources in the treatment. Is there any NGO that you might be aware of that they could use as a reference for help?
Yeah, Alifia, this is a common concern. Cancer, unfortunately, is a very expensive illness. The treatments are really, really expensive, and many families go through the kind of challenges that you're describing. There are organizations, there are foundations and trusts and so on. But I must be honest with you that the amount of money that they disperse is very small. It's not a lot. And ultimately, unfortunately, the pressure comes back onto family and friends, right? If you're very lucky and if you get picked up, let's say for a clinical trial or something like that, then the treatment you may not have to pay for. But that happens to a very small number of people. Actually, if you just, I don't know any specific NGOs, but I do know that there are various foundations and trusts that do support. I have heard of a few cases who have got some help from the state government or the central government. There are some funds available, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be a very pleasant experience to get those funds. So I'm afraid I don't have too much good news for you on that front. Sorry.
Are there hospitals where which you would recommend where good treatment is available at affordable prices?
I mean, I don't know specifically, but I do know that many of the large hospitals, George, they have a small quota that if they are treating 100 patients at full cost, then typically they'll have a quota where they might treat 10 patients at 50% of the cost or 25% of the cost or 30% of the cost. And I suspect that if you go and actually, if you just talk to the hospital directly, they may not be very helpful, but maybe some of the trustees of the hospital or something like that may be a little more open to giving you a chance to come under those kinds of quotas. It's a very small quota, though it's not a very big quota, I must admit, from what I have heard, but some hospitals do have such quotas.
Joy, sir?
Yes.
Jay Chandran?
Yes.
Actually, I don't know where from the which state they are asking about actually, but in Chennai we have the Cancer Institute. I think.
Yeah.
They for free treatment is also available, and many celebrities also taking that taking treatment there actually. In payment, they pay those who can pay, they can pay.
Correct.
The rest of them, it is a trust actually.
Correct.
So for the rest of the people, they treat in free of cost. And the thing is, suppose they go for chemotherapy means, if we can afford means we can go for higher drugs. It doesn't have any side effects like hair loss or like that actually. If it is for the free of cost means, they will go for the lower medicines actually, which has a lot of side effects like that. In Chennai, we have a big institute, Cardiac Cancer Institute is there actually.
Yes.
It is running for nearly 50 years, I think. Recently, our Prime Minister also visited there actually.
Right.
Jayachandran is right. Even Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai has a similar approach. But the thing is, the demand is so high there that it's very hard to get access to that free treatment. Unfortunately, that is the challenge.
In Chennai, high people also. For example, one actress was there actually. She's famous actress, Tamil actress actually. Her name is Gautami. She also suffered diagnosed for breast cancer. She got treated there only, and she is now fine.
Excellent, excellent.
And the low-level slum people is also coming there actually.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to add on to this information?
Yes, please. Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay, I'm Chintan from Gujarat, Ahmedabad. Basically, Satya Sai Institutes, who belong to Puttaparthi actually, they have two big hospitals, one at Ahmedabad and one at Rajkot. I have heard, I have no experience actually, but I have heard that they provide completely free treatment on cancer. But it needs to be checked once, because it has been coming in media many a times that this is the hospital who provide completely free treatment for cancer patients. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chintan, for that information. Thanks, Jayachandran, also.
Madam, Satya Sai organization means in Puttaparthi also there is one super specialty hospital is there actually, and in Whitefield also there is one hospital, it seems. There also they are having very big multi-specialty hospitals actually, but of course it's free of cost only. Satya Sai organizations can connect all the things free of cost only. Thank you.
Thanks, Jayachandran.
I hope Alethea can make use of all this information that's been shared. If you allow me, I'll have asked one more question, Vijay.
Sure.
Yeah. So tell me something. We are living in an age of information overload.
Yes.
And we are reasonably well aware, I would say, as people earlier generations would have been. So the minute we get diagnosed with something, we just go onto the internet. Yeah. And we read all about it. And, we go to the doctors and we're so curious. We ask 10,000 questions and we come back and read up. And typically, the first stage of research throws all bad news at you, because also you don't know how to sift through the internet.
Yes.
So what would your advice to someone with a chronic illness or like a sudden diagnosis, like a cancer, would be?
See, the problem is, as they say, the problem is not with the radar. It is the operator who is under question, right? So the problem is not with the internet. It's our ability to discern whether something is meaningful or not meaningful. And this takes a lot of time before you get to that place. So I would say that on the whole, a well-informed and knowledgeable patient is better than an ill-informed patient. Okay, sure. On the whole. However, sometimes the information available on the internet is so confusing and often so negative that it has the wrong impact. Now, this requires the person who is reading to have the framework and have the discernment. If you don't have a framework in your mind, you don't know how to evaluate what you're reading.
Yeah.
Right? It's because of not having a framework that you don't know what to do. You get more confused than ever. which is why our response has been to say, look, let's create the framework. Let more people be aware of it. Let them be able to. So for example, we have created an online diagnostic where you can actually measure your own stress.
Okay.
Now, most people say, how do I know what is my stress? Where is it coming from, etc.? There is no simple diagnostic for that. Right? So we said, अच्छा नहीं है तो हम बनाएंगे. So we have created a diagnostic and it's free on the internet. We offer it on our website. So anybody can go there and take that questionnaire and use our framework and understand their own stress. And once you understand where your stress is coming from, what your level of stress is, then you'll be in a better position to evaluate all this information that is coming to you.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think this problem can be solved overnight. It has to, many people have to do a lot for it. But we have in our own small way started to take some steps towards this to say, let us provide people a diagnostic, let us provide people a framework, let us provide people a program, and let us provide people a way to measure the effectiveness of the program. If we can do these few things, then hopefully this will be our little service to the problem of cancer.
Thanks. Okay, I don't see any more questions.
Vijay sir, Jayachandran.
Oh.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
Please.
Sorry. Something I wanted to ask, for suddenly I forgot. You said 93% of the cancer is because of lifestyle. Could you please say a few words about that? Actually, in what way we can say a few words about that? So lifestyle. What could be the lifestyle in order to rid out of these ailments?
Yeah. First of all, Jayachandran, 93% is lifestyle and environment. It's not only lifestyle. Okay, so depending on the environment, depending on... now, when you look at lifestyle, as I said, the physical part consists of diet, exercise, rest, and laughter. And there are emotional stressors, there are mental stressors. All of these constitute our lifestyle. So when I say that the best thing you can do is to manage your lifestyle and improve your immunity, first of all, you have to diagnose. And therefore, I will put in the chat box the link to the Holistic Health Questionnaire as well.
It's available on our site, right, sir?
It is available on our site. But again, I request Shruti and George, if anyone who's been on this call would like to look at it and take it, it is freely available. So you are welcome to take it.
Sure. We'll circulate it also. Yeah.
Right. So, Jayachandran, the steps are, first of all, you need to have a diagnosis. And based upon that, you can take the actions that you need to take. They may be just day-to-day lifestyle choices that you need to make, or you may need specialized help. But until you have a diagnosis, how will you know? Right? So that is why we recommend to people that first you diagnose, first you understand yourself better. Then you can decide what are the solutions that are appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So if there are no more questions.
Yep, we don't have any more questions at the moment, George. Yeah.
So I'd like to formally kind of thank you, Vijay, for taking the time and making a very insightful presentation. And I think all of us have grown, would be leaving this Zoom meeting that much wiser.
Hello.
And is somebody wanting to ask a question?
Hello.
Yeah, who is this? Please go ahead.
What is chemotherapy, sir?
Chemotherapy, maybe. Would you like to talk about it? It's a technical question, but
Sure. So I don't know who asked the question, but
I think it is Prabh Simran, I think, from Faridabad.
Okay. So when you have cancer, there are basically 4 kinds of treatments that you can get. The first treatment is surgery, where the cancer or the tumor is actually removed by the surgeon. They go inside the body and they chop it off and they take it out. So for some types of cancer, surgery is a possibility. Like in my case, it was possible for them to take out a part of the colon and join the two parts together so that I could continue to be functional. So surgery is one kind of treatment. The second kind of treatment is called chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is a mixture of different types of drugs that is put into your body intravenously. It goes into your bloodstream. And because it goes into your bloodstream, it spreads right through the body. Wherever the blood goes, the chemotherapy goes. And the idea is that the chemotherapy will be able to kill the cancer cells wherever they are in the body. Okay. So while that is the advantage of chemotherapy, the downside of chemotherapy is that it can negatively affect other organs because it is going everywhere. It is not only going to where the cancer is, right? So that is chemotherapy. And that's why people are very afraid of the side effects of chemotherapy, as somebody else pointed out. The third kind of treatment is called radiotherapy. And basically what is done here is that there is like a radioactive laser waves, like a beam is targeted and focuses on the tumor or on the cancer. And the idea here is that through that radioactivity, that tumor will be burnt away. Okay, this is called radiotherapy. And this requires big equipment and it's quite expensive and requires a very highly trained radiation oncologist to be able to do this for you. And the fourth area in medical terms is now called immunotherapy. So now the medical system has also understood that the immune system is very key when it comes to cancer. So now they are trying to find drugs and they are trying to find protocols where the immune system can be reactivated or the immune system can be supplemented in order to deal with the cancer. So this is called immune therapy or biotherapy. So these are the four main ways in which the medical system looks at cancer. Once you leave the medical system and you look at the other things, there are many other ways, right? So there is Ayurveda, there is homeopathy, there is Unani, Siddha, so many different medical systems. There are Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, etc. But surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immune therapy are the four main treatments that the Western medicine system offers.
Thanks Vijay for that. And it's almost 5:30, so I think we will close for the moment. It was wonderful having you on the show, Vijay, and I think if there are questions others have, we will email you and maybe you could respond to them. But thank you so much for your time, and we've all kind of leaving this session that much wiser, as I said earlier. And wish you all the best as you continue with your drive, the Thrive Drive and the campaigns. And we'll explore as we go forward as to how maybe visually impaired people can add value to the work you're doing. So we'll have that conversation. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you to all the participants. And I enjoyed myself and I hope it was of value to everybody. Goodbye.
Of course. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir, Vijay sir. Bye.
Bye.